Do you see any service provided by the government that is anything like Twitter? Is there a Facebook provided by the government? Is there a YouTube provided by the government? No. There is absolutely no governmental service being provided by Twitter. Yes, Twitter is used to facilitate speech, and people use it to communicate with one another. And in that sense, they talk about government, and government, can happen partially that way, but that's not reaching a level of we're providing water, sewer, gas, fire, electric, heat, etc., and we need to then be regulated by a constitution as such. Everyone is telling me that we have to read the Devon Nunes complaint. It is 40 pages long, so we are going to skim some of it, but I left half an hour here for us to talk about this because it seems like it's pretty ridiculous, the little bit of it that I read. I'm not trying to prime you. You can make your own decision, but we've read a lot of these complaints, right? A lot of them get straight to the meat and potatoes, and they get straight to the issues. They get straight to the material facts and everything that we need to know, and others don't. And maybe you can describe or choose for yourself. You can choose your own adventure, how you want to interpret the writing we're about to read. This is a partially dramatic reading of Devon G. Nunes, plaintiff, versus Twitter, Elizabeth Mayer, Mayer Strategies, Devon Nunes Mom, the @DevonNunesMom Twitter account, and Devon Nunes Cow, the @DevonCow Twitter account. Defendants. Plaintiff Devon G. Nunes by counsel files the following complaint against defendants Twitter, Elizabeth Mayer, Mayer Strategies, Devon Nunes Mom, and Devon Nunes Cow jointly and severally. Plaintiff seeks compensatory damages and punitive damages in an amount not less than $250 million, pre-judgment interest on the principal sum from the dates at 6%, etc., court costs arising out of defendants, negligence, defamation per se, insulting words, and civil conspiracy. Twitter is an information content provider, and then he goes into a whole definition. It means any person or entity that is responsible in whole or in part for the creation or development of information provided through the internet or any other interactive computer service. The word responsible ordinarily has a normative connotation. When we say every man is responsible for his own actions, we do not think definitely of any authority, law, or tribunal before which he must answer, but rather of the general law of right. Okay, so by the way, just a quick pro tip. If you're starting your argument with giant paragraphs of how we must interpret a common word in a certain way, you might be on the wrong foot.
If page 2 of your document has a footer that is longer than the actual text of the document on that page, you have a problem.
Twitter creates and develops content, and then he goes on to describe the word develops is derived from the Old French developer, essence to unwrap. Why we need to know all this, I'm not sure, but okay. And then content, which he is describing as information. This is already a little bit nuts. They are an information provider who creates and develops content through a combination of means. A, by explicit censorship of viewpoints with which it disagrees, by shadow banning conservatives such as plaintiff, by knowingly hosting and monetizing content that is clearly abusive, hateful, and defamatory, providing both a voice and financial incentive to defamers, thereby facilitating defamation, by completely ignoring lawful complaints about offensive content and by allowing that content to remain accessible to the public, and by intentionally abandoning and refusing to enforce its so-called terms of service and Twitter rules, essentially refusing to self-regulate, thereby selectively amplifying the message of defamers such as Mayer, Devon Nunes Mom, and Devon Nunes Cow, materially contributing to the libelousness of the hundreds of posts at issue in this action. Okay, now let's back up for 1 second here and remember who Devon Nunes is. Isn't he a House or Senate member? Isn't he somebody who represents the United States in some way? He's a Republican politician, U.S. representative for California's 22nd Congressional District. I can pull this up in Firefox, actually. Nunes' district is the 22nd after redistricting in the San Joaquin Valley of Fresno, western Tulare County, and much of eastern Fresno County. So he's a currently serving House Intelligence Committee and House of Representatives member. So he is a congressman. And what do we know about congressmen? They are public figures, and defamation applies differently to them. So we should look this part up first as well. A public figure is a person such as a politician who has certain social position. In the context of defamation as well as invasion of privacy, a public figure cannot succeed in a lawsuit on incorrect, harmful statements in the United States unless there is proof that the writer or publisher acted with actual malice by knowing the falsity or with reckless disregard for the truth. The legal burden of proof in defamation actions is thus higher in the case of a public figure than in the case of an ordinary person. And then don't forget that another part of defamation is that you have to prove actual damage. Not just that someone said hurtful words and that those words were untrue, and that in this case that actual malice was afoot, but that also that there was actual damage done to the plaintiff. Twitter created and developed the content at issue in this case by transforming false accusations of criminal conduct, imputed wrongdoing, dishonesty, and lack of integrity into a publicly available commodity used by unscrupulous political operatives and their donor clients as a weapon. Twitter knew defamation was and is happening. Twitter let it happen because Twitter has a political agenda and motive. Okay, I'm going to skip some of this because it's just kind of pointless here. Let's see. Devon Nunes has 3 daughters. He's married. He's the author of the book Restoring the Republic, which was published September 2010, etc., etc. They go through a lot of facts about Devon Nunes. You can read them all on page 5 there. His career is distinguished by honor, dedication, and service. That's debatable. We can have some debates about Devon Nunes' honesty and reputation. Let's see. During the last re-election campaign, he endured an orchestrated defamation campaign of stunning breadth and scope, one that no human being should ever have to bear or suffer in their whole life. I don't know if this guy has never seen a political campaign, but there's this kind of like mudslinging goes on during a political campaign. I'm pretty sure that it was actually worse in the past, and this is probably the best we've seen it. Anyone else want to comment on that? Unlike prior elections where Nunes won by sweeping majorities, Nunes won by a much narrower margin on November 6, 2018. Defendant Twitter is a Delaware corporation, a global platform for public self-expression, etc. Twitter is ubiquitous. Twitter is at home in Virginia. Where are we here? Are we in Virginia? I didn't look. We are in the circuit court for the county of Enrico, which I'm assuming is California. Twitter targets Virginians. Defendant Mayor is a citizen of Virginia. She lives and works in Arlington. She currently operates a Twitter account, brand value $4B, with the handle tag Liz Mayor and 37,000 followers. How many followers does Devon Nunes has? She admits that she smears opposition for her clients and gets shit done.
So Devon Nunes currently, as of Sunday, March 24th, has 403,000 followers.
We know what the Streisand effect is, right? Like, Devon Nunes has heard of the Streisand effect. He knows that he's going to create something new here, I wonder. We're going to be calling this the Nunes effect. Let's see. She allegedly conspired with one or more clients to attack and smear Nunes. True to her word, she relentlessly smeared and defamed Nunes during the campaign, filming stunts at Nunes' office, posting them online, publishing videos. None of this so far describes what exactly the defamation was yet.
Just for context, at Devon Cow has 633,000 followers.
Okay, there you go. Repeatedly published defaming, filing fraudulent ethics complaints against Nunes, accusing him of violating House ethics rules. As part of her smear campaign on behalf of clients, Mayor was out to stick it to Nunes. By her own admission, she hates... Okay, here's some of the false statements. Why would he put the false statements, which are material to the complaint, in footnotes? I'm just seriously confused. Among the false statements published by Mayer in this video is that Nunes is still entangled with a winery implicated in a scandal involving his co-investors, cocaine, and child prostitutes. In this publication, Mayer makes the following false statements about Nunes. Ethical leadership in government. He's invested in a winery that allegedly solicited capital by using underage prostitutes. Really? Mayer published the following statement to the Fresno Bee. The Office of Congressional Ethics should prioritize the review of Representative Nunes' investment and involvement in Alpha Omega Winery and the facts reported by the Fresno Bee. Such review should be undertaken as swiftly as possible. Recommending that someone review someone's ethics, while it might be a dickhead move, that's certainly not. Does anyone agree that that's kind of automatically not defamatory?
Yeah, especially because you don't want to... you want people to report suspicious activity to these investigatory bodies. So if that could be defamatory, if you say, hey, I think this person did X and X thing, you should investigate it, and then the investigation says we didn't find evidence of that, you don't want to turn around and sue the whistleblower for defamation like that.
I've actually never heard these accusations against him, so he's really only highlighting these things for himself. Another tweet said, holy crap, a yacht, cocaine, prostitutes, winery partly owned by Nunes, sued after fundraiser event. Mayer's tweet implied that Nunes colluded with prostitutes and cocaine addicts, that Nunes does cocaine, and that Nunes was involved in a Russian money laundering front. One of Mayer's most egregious and defamatory tweets was the following. To be fair, I think the Fresno Bee writing up your investment in a winery that allegedly used underage hookers to solicit investment, an allegation you've known about for years, during which you've stayed invested in it, I might add, did surprise you. I'm not trying to defend Liz Mayer here, but it does sound like that tweet is about, I read this article in the Fresno Bee, I don't like what they said, and people should look into it and do something about you. That's frankly all I'm really seeing there, but let's keep going.
Your suggestion that he's making his own effect is true. The account had 1,200 followers 2 months ago, and now it has 500 or whatever, 600,000.
Yeah, we're going to follow them too, just out of general principle. Defendant Mayer Strategies is a Virginia limited liability company. The defendant, Devon Nunes' mom, is a person who hijacked Nunes' name, falsely impersonated Nunes' mother, and created and maintained an account on Twitter. He doesn't understand parody or satire or criticism of a public figure. He really doesn't understand this, does he? Let's not forget that both political, all political parties do this. I'm not saying that defamation is okay. I'm certainly, if this really reaches a level of defamation, then yeah, I guess he deserves relief. I've yet to read what the damage is. So far, the only damage I've seen is his votes went down, and that doesn't seem to be remediable damage in the U.S. Because if you could sue somebody for attempting to alter who people vote for by providing false information, we'd have to go back and investigate the Trump campaign, because there was obviously something going on then. Number of people have been indicted. People are going to jail because there was misinformation during that political campaign. So what I'm trying to point out is that we have a much higher standard for this kind of defamation than I think Nunes has reached here. I think people can have concerns about his investments, and if the Fresno Bee falsely reported something, well, anyone notice that the Fresno Bee is not listed as the defendant here? But wasn't it the Fresno Bee that allegedly falsely reported something? Let me go all the way up here. You do not see Fresno Bee anywhere in here, or anyone related to Fresno Bee. So they're not suing the Fresno Bee. They're suing this Twitter account because, in my personal humble opinion so far, this is just a political stunt and not a meritorious lawsuit. And in my humble opinion, this is a misuse of the legal system. Running around D.C., jumping from Ubers, doing political stunts, obstructing an investigation he was supposed to lead, leaking classified info. What about Central Valley's water infrastructure? I don't know about you, but I'm getting tired of this BS. This is going to be disastrous for California 22, but please understand Devon Nunes' difficult situation between being eyeball deep in a federal obstruction investigation and then cradling the president's balls full time. He just doesn't have time for you anymore. Surely you understand. I wonder who's paying Devon Nunes all this money to obstruct justice. Devon Nunes, your district is looking for you. Are you trying to obstruct a federal investigation again? You come home right this instant. No more Minecraft. On November 6th, you have the choice between law and order or obstruction of justice. If you believe in law and order, vote for Jans for Congress. If you believe for obstruction and perjury, vote for Devon Nunes. When you say obstruction, we're talking about Devon Nunes, etc. So, going on, he says that there were false accusations of being a racist, white supremacist friend, disturbing inflammatory racial propaganda, fake news MAGA, probably joined the Proud Boys, if I weren't for unfortunate no masturbating rule, disparagingly called him a presidential fluffer and swamp rat. I'm going to stop because they're probably already demonetized about 6 pages ago. But you can see here from all of this that there's a lot of stuff that this account says about Devon Nunes, including a human centipede drawing. There's a lot here. I'm just going to page through it, and you can read some of this. There's so much they don't know, sweetie. I also hope they don't know about all the hookers and coke on boats. Please don't retweet this. It's going to make Devon Nunes look really bad. It's Liz Mayer saying, good afternoon. In your non-Kavanaugh news, our ad pointing out a slew of Devon Nunes failures is up on the air for a second week in a row. Watch it here. Donate, etc. Devon Nunes is a criminal too. 718 days till your term is up, etc. And then he's trying to make the connection that Twitter has authorized this account, and therefore Twitter is also reachable under this lawsuit. So, statement of additional material facts. That's interesting that they have to break this up into an additional statement of material facts. Twitter generates revenue. Twitter has rules of service. Twitter expressly bars abusive and hateful conduct. And so he's trying to... So this is lame, mostly because he's trying to say that Twitter's not allowed to enforce its own rules as it sees fit, and instead it has to enforce its rules the way any one of its users says they have to. And Devon Nunes is one of its users, so therefore Twitter has to enforce its rules the way Devon Nunes says that they have to enforce their rules. This will be the same as if any one of us said, well, we don't agree with the way Twitter is enforcing their rules, so they're in violation of their own terms of service, and since the terms of service are a contract between us, I can sue you under that contract. We've already seen this fail. There was a Prager University lawsuit, I think, that we were following against YouTube about a year and a half ago, and the court very quickly and easily ruled that YouTube is allowed to control the content on their own platform. I'm assuming Twitter is going to be doing the same thing. Nunes here, just for your sense of irony, Nunes is complaining that Twitter did absolutely nothing when various accounts made connections between him and Russian involvement in the 2000 presidential election. That's funny because isn't the accusation that Twitter did nothing in the 2016 presidential election when the corruption and Russian involvement was allegedly going on? So that's awfully funny there. And then if we go back here, he complains about shadow banning. Definitely something worthy of complaining about. Shadow banning would be illegal under due process if the actor was a government actor. So if Twitter is a government entity or otherwise acting on behalf of the government or acting as a government agency or holding itself out with authority as a government agency or something, then yeah, they would not be able to shadow ban people without providing notice and an opportunity to respond and a path to appeal and all that. But they're not. They're a private organization, and any government actor that is acting on their platform can turn their own account and their own actions, but not Twitter itself. Not Twitter itself doesn't somehow get converted entirely. This is more like the case where President Trump was tweeting public policy and other governmental action from his own personal Twitter account, which meant that he can now not run his own personal Twitter account, just that one, as a private entity. It has to be run like a public entity. Everyone has to have access to it. He can't just ban people. This is not Twitter banning people for things. That was Donald Trump banning people for things. This is different. So Twitter is, at least as far as I know, I don't like it, but they're allowed to shadow ban people. And then they're saying that they shadow banned Plaintiff, who I guess is Devon Nunes, right? So I'm not sure if he is still shadow banned, or I guess he's been unbanned now, if you're telling me that he has followers and an account. And they are accusing Twitter and the Twitter accounts of negligence because they didn't allow the candidate to use Twitter. Wow. Access to Twitter is essential for meaningful participation in a modern day democracy. He really is trying to make the accusation that Twitter is a government actor or otherwise has become such a public forum that it is under the control of the government and needs to adhere to the Bill of Rights as if it was a governmental actor. No, I don't think Twitter is that big. I don't think any of those facts are true. However, I know a lot of people who think those things also happen to agree with Devon Nunes' political standing, his political stance, his Republican stance, his member of the Republican Party. I'm not trying to be political here, but I know a lot of people have been trying to say that Twitter is a bastion of free speech and is a government actor, and some people even make the leap that the Donald Trump account lawsuit means that all of Twitter has to be unbanned and all that, and you can say whatever you want on Twitter, and none of that is actually true. And a proportion, I'll leave the actual proportionality to you guys to evaluate for yourself, but a not insignificant, a quite significant proportion of people who think that all this is a huge travesty against free speech and all that, are also the people who are trying to espouse Republican views on some of these platforms. And I could not tell you whether Twitter actually disproportionately bans Republican accounts more than Democratic or opposing viewpoint accounts, but they have the right to. It's a private organization. An organization can choose to be leaning towards Democratic or leaning towards Republican, and they can refuse to allow me to join if I'm not the side that they're on. Or in my case, I try to be in the middle. I might not be allowed on either side. That also bothers me, but I don't have a lawsuit for that. Let's keep going real quick here. There's only a few pages left. Access to Twitter is essential. The ability to use Twitter is a vital part of modern citizenship. A presence on Twitter is essential for an individual to run for office or engage in any level of political organizing in modern America. That is because Twitter is not merely a website. It is now a modern town square. It is the equivalent to a private owner of a public forum who has fully opened its property to the general public for purposes of permitting the public's free expression and debate. That is, in fact, what Twitter has always claimed to be. Its stated mission is to give everyone the power to create and share ideas instantly without barriers. Its self-proclaimed guiding principle is that we believe in free expression and believe every voice has the power to impact the world, and it has referred to itself as the live public square, a public space, a forum where conversations happen. Okay, that still doesn't convert it into some kind of government actor or otherwise public forum. If they're saying that you aren't allowed to ask people to leave your private property because you've opened it to the public for something, there's more to how that works. I honestly don't have it off the top of my head, but there's a lot more to how a private space becomes a recognized public forum. Don't think Twitter has reached that level. And I don't think Devon Nunes has done his research into meeting that level either. As a private operator of a public square, Twitter owes Nunes a duty to exercise ordinary and reasonable care in the operation of its platform. I'm not sure that they owe anybody a duty of care and are therefore guilty of negligence. He asked for $250 million in response. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, the only example I know where a private entity gets tagged with governmental level, like First Amendment protections, are company towns. And there hasn't been a case like that in a long time.
Yeah, there we go. That's what I was thinking of. Thank you for refreshing my memory.
Someone tried that with AOL in the late 90s on that same theory, and it didn't work then.
It's not going to work now either.
No, it doesn't.
Let me explain in my opinion, my professional opinion, why. Kurt reminded me that it was the private public town that triggers this level of scrutiny and this Bill of Rights issue and all that. So follow this hypothetical. We're in the middle of nowhere. I'll say out west, but it doesn't matter. But let's say out west. Let's say we're in the middle of Nebraska, or we're in the middle of Oklahoma or something. Let's say we're in sort of undiscovered, undeveloped land or whatever, miles and miles and miles and miles of unused, undiscovered land, just for the purposes of this hypothetical. And along comes a prospector who discovers oil. It's a huge discovery. It's a large discovery of oil. It's one of the largest discoveries of oil. It rivals the Marcellus Shale discovery of natural gas in the Northeast. Well, all of a sudden you're going to have oil company trucks and development and all that, and then you're going to have repair shops. Someone's going to have to provide electricity to all of these people. Someone's going to have to provide clean water. Someone's going to have to provide food. These trucks are going to have to drive on roads that get built by contractors who build roads. Under those roads is going to have to be sewers and electricity and infrastructure under that, or above it on telephone poles, but obviously sewer doesn't go on telephone poles. Or there's going to have to be people who are emptying septic tanks or whatever. So you're starting to sound like a town, aren't you? Well, this happens. This is actually how a lot of towns happen. A little something turns into a big something, turns into a real big something, and suddenly there needs to be infrastructure. And so we start to have private roads built, and we start to have private infrastructure built, and then eventually you start to have services like police and fire, but they're done by private companies. The oil company is providing security, and because it's oil, they also provide fire because they're skilled at that. And there's no hospital in the area, and people are going to get hurt by all this heavy equipment, so they're going to have to provide hospital facilities. And all of this is owned by one company or maybe a handful of companies. It's all private. But now, can that company tell you can't publish a newspaper that's critical of the company in that town? Well, it sounds like they can. It's a private company. It's a private town. We own this town. We own this land. We own this oil. It's a private company. But no, you are a citizen in the United States, and you have at least the bare minimum rights to live in a society and to have the rights of a society and all that. And so at some point, you are no longer on the employer's property doing your job as an employee, and you are no longer subject to the employer's restriction of, no, you can't publish words critical of the employer when you are an employee on employer property on employer time. Once you're no longer doing a job and you're just living a life, but you're in the company town, on the company roads, drinking the company provided water that you should be paying for at some level. But once you're doing all those non-company related stuff, that sounds a lot more like you're just a citizen living in a society. Now the company has to provide you with the constitutional rights, and those services, they don't necessarily have to provide the services, but they have to, when they provide them, they have to comply with the Bill of Rights and the other constitutional amendments. So if they provide security, security has to provide you with due process rights in pulling your car over or searching your house or getting a warrant or whatever. They have to have some sort of judiciary that observes due process, observes the Bill of Rights, observes constitutionality and other applicable laws in the state and everything. They can create their own local ordinances that don't conflict with the state's ability to create regulations and all that, but they can't limit things further than the Constitution allows or further than state or federal law allows. They would be basically a local municipality, and even if they're not organized as a public organization, they would be subject to public rules and regulations. Is that about right, Kurt?
Yeah, you got it. Basically, the company becomes so all-encompassing. It's doing all these functions that look suspiciously like government functions. At some point, they say, yeah, you're government. And so...
Yeah.
So the analogy for Twitter would be basically that Twitter would have to be so dominating. AOL was a better example of this, actually. Because back in the day when AOL was dominant, the portal for everything, AOL was actually a better example. But Twitter would have to be so all-encompassing that it's doing all these functions that it basically, at some point, should be regulated under First Amendment protections. Yeah, and if AOL didn't qualify back in the late 90s when they were the internet provider, Twitter isn't qualifying now.
So Devon Nunes is essentially saying that Twitter's services are so fundamental to your existence on the planet, they are so necessary that it's akin to the water, sewer, fire, police, hospital, basic zoning, or not zoning. You're allowed to not zone, but basic governmental service. That Twitter is basically providing such fundamental governmental services, or services that would be provided by the government. Well, honestly, let's back up a second. Do you see any service provided by the government that is anything like Twitter? Is there a Facebook provided by the government? Is there a YouTube provided by the government? No. There is absolutely no governmental service being provided by Twitter. Yes, Twitter is used to facilitate speech, and people use it to communicate with one another. And in that sense, they talk about government, and government, can happen partially that way, but that's not reaching a level of we're providing water, sewer, gas, fire, electric, heat, etc., and we need to then be regulated by a constitution as such. Let's continue and finish this up, because I'm done with Devon Nunes. He says this is defamatory per se. And he might not be entirely wrong. I think there's definitely some false statements being made here, or at least some statements that could potentially be false. So they could be defamatory, at least at first. But then there's also a defense to defamation, or the rhetorical hyperbole. This is the same defense that was used to defend Donald Trump's account from some of the hyperbolic things he says. If the statement by itself, a reasonable person would not outright believe that statement was true. There's a definition to this. It's considered, if it's hyperbolic enough, it's considered hyperbole, and not something that a reasonable person would take to be a 100% true statement. I've never even heard of this insulting words statute, but Virginia Code apparently has insulting words in the context and under the circumstances in which they were written or tweeted that tend to violence. Maybe they mean violate, or maybe the language in the statute is written that archaically, tend to violence and breach of the peace. Tend to violence. I guess tend to violence means tend to be violent. Okay.
They're thinking fighting words.
Like any reasonable person, Nunes was humiliated, disgusted, angered, provoked, and insulted by defendants' insulting words, and that's worth $250 million, according to him. He also calls it a common law conspiracy, that these people worked together, including with operatives or agents of the Democratic Party, to injure Nunes to the tune of $250 million. He wants an injunction to prevent the Devon Nunes mom and Devon Nunes cow, fire Devon Nunes and Devon Nunes grapes accounts he wants to reveal the names behind the accounts, as well as suspending Liz Mayer and Devon Nunes mom and Devon cow, and deactivate all their tweets, hyperlinks, etc. So that's a lot. He wants $250 million in compensatory damages, $350,000 in punitive damages, prejudgment and post-judgment interest, attorney's fees and costs, and such other relief. This was filed by Steve Bliss at earthlink.net. That's a very interesting attorney's email address. I don't typically see a lot of attorneys practicing using their personal private email account. You usually get a domain name and have an email go through there. It's not expensive, $4 a month or something. So anyway, what do we think of that? That's pretty crazy, and I I think I can unequivocally and without political bias state that that's not a sustainable complaint. I don't think. I think Twitter and the defendants will file a motion to dismiss if they're even ever served with it. This really could be just a political stunt. There must be some person or group that Devon Nunes benefits from having filed this, and they might look at him favorably for having at least made this strategic move, so that someone somewhere can say, hey, look, at least I did this. I don't think anyone thinks it has. I would be interested to hear, I'll put this politely, I'd be interested to hear from someone who thinks that this complaint has any merit whatsoever. My one question is, what's the damage? Nothing in there went over damages, and defamation, even defamation per se, still needs damages, right? Defamation per se doesn't need a proof of defamation, further proof of defamation. It needs damages, though. What was the damage? He was insulted. He didn't lose the election.
He can claim that what they said was defamatory, but I don't know if Twitter should be financially punished because somebody said somewhere that it was defamation and then they didn't take it down. Like, defamation in the end, that's up to a judge to decide. And so if a judge has not decided that it's defamation yet, then I don't think that Twitter is obligated to act.
Yeah, I believe it's a Communications Decency Act thing, if not a copyright DMCA thing, that they are an intermediary. In DMCA, we'd call it the safe harbor. Under Communications Decency Act, I believe there is a protection for the intermediary of a transmission. But there is something else. It is not just copyright law that says that a host who just acts as an intermediary is not liable for the defamation either. He's not liable for the contents of the message. That's our show. I'm sorry it ran long. We had some technical difficulties in the beginning. I am Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney, and we will thank all of our March Patreon supporters at the $50 level: Jonathon Doe, John Steele, Gavin Barnard, Eevi, Andy, Kyle Mudrak, Verement, Tayne, Michael Pearce, Terry Crisp, Richard Fournier, Spirit Bear, Jan Negrey, Daniel Perez, and Aspernari. Thank you very much for your support at the $50 level. If you choose to support on patreon.com/ljfrench, your pledge will become an actual dollar support the first or so of the next month. So if you wanted the support for April, you'd have to start now, and then you'll be on the list for April. The $5 plus supporters for March are scrolling on the LED panel behind me and are also going to be on the crawl of any VODs that we drop using this video. So let's just hold Nico, give him a great big hug, and call that our stream. Love you guys. Pick his head up. He doesn't want to pick his head up. He's fighting me. Love you guys. Bye.